This is Paul. Some of you know about the dream. I've written about it on Substack. I'll put the link below, and I'll put the link to the video below. That's in there too. You know, the dream came up again, and the question has always been, what is the electricity in the dream? And I wonder, lately I've been just wondering if the algorithm isn't the electricity in the dream, because in a lot of ways, sort of the TLC has been fueled by YouTube. And the algorithm is a big part of that fuel of how YouTube works. Now, I'm going to make a video about this video that in a Signal chat, Risto and Mark D. Parker were talking about. And this is a really excellent video. It's about from a year ago. And I want to deal with that. And that deals with the algorithm to a degree, but I don't want to make this video quite as long. I often fail at that. And what I really want to talk about is Luke and Matt C. And I'm only about 45 minutes into this video, but I want to get at some of what they talk at the beginning, and then I'll finish the video a little bit later. But it's a good conversation, and it brought up a bunch of things about what the TLC is for and what we all sort of need to survive.
Here, Matt C is here. We're gonna chat. I'm coming out just firing heaters because I'm fired up about. You're gonna catch me up mainly on the group chat because it's text based. We were just talking about that, and I can't keep up. But everyone loves text based and is annoyed with.
So Luke has sort of been colonizing the corner with his Signal chats. He used to do this Voxer thing that some of us just wouldn't do that with him. And he got me into one Signal group with Mark Parker, and Matt was actually in that one. A whole bunch of people were in that, and they all left, and it's just me and Mark Parker and Risto. So, and I don't mind a little Signal group chat with three of us. It's been good, especially because, you know, Mark has been continuing to process. You know, he's very transparent. He talks about it on his channel. His mother is perhaps in her last days, so he's taking care of her. He's had this whole falling apart of his relationship with the church that he went to for years in Redlands, and now he's looking at Rome and thinking about Catholicism, and, you know, said something really quite dramatic. You know, so while this can get a little meta, because the video that I released this morning, that is where I'm talking about Mark's previous video, then Mark, who is in the member section, so gets my video right away and no wait, no ads. And then he's making a response to my video even before my video comes out on Monday. And it seems meta, but we're not really in the... Are we doing content creation? Are we talking to each other? So Mark and I are, you know, we have our own private channels. We can text. We're in this little Signal group together. We can chat, and I'm in this other little Signal group, and we talk about different things in the different Signal groups. But you know, what is Mark is processing his spiritual life on the internet, and the reason he's doing it, and the reason a small channel serves to do this, is because he can get feedback with it. And this is, of course, kind of the crux that Mark Parker is in, because the act of switching religions by way of evaluation is a consumerist act.
All right. This is the spot. The act of switching religions by evaluation is a consumerist act. Let's see if I got that right.
The act of switching religions by way of evaluation is a consumerist act. Now, I had actually written in the Signal chat after I saw Mark did this, because part of the difficulty that we're facing is there's almost no way in America to not be Protestant, even if you're going to a Catholic church or an Orthodox church, or don't even consider yourself a Christian. Certain elements of Protestantism that just came in, and even consumerism. If you have options, you're going to choose. Now, you might debate whether or not that's actually consumerist, but if you're living in a tiny little village in the Middle Ages and there's one kind of church there, that's your church. Now, you might have a good priest or a bad priest. I was just talking to someone today who was telling me about this person is in her 80s, and she's talking about another one of her friends who is in her 80s. And this other woman is a very traditional Catholic. I mean, she's fasting for Lent. She's doing all of the things. But when she goes to Mass, she drives a considerable distance to go to the Catholic church that has the priest that she likes. She doesn't go to and she's lost her license. She doesn't go to the local church. She doesn't go to the nearest church. She chooses the priest that is in alignment with her. Now, is that Protestantism? Is that consumerism? I don't want to put those words on anybody and sort of give them shade or condemnation, but it's simply the observation that the environment we are living in is shaping us in ways that we simply are not in control of. And sometimes people will go to dramatic levels to not participate in that. I will go to the closest church near my house. If you listen to Gavin's Rando carefully, you'll learn that the closest church near his house was an LDS church. And he went there and it was like, no, this isn't for me. So then he went to the mega church, and that mega church, multi-site mega church, was closest. Part of the ways, Ready for Harvest does a great video on churches that had McDonald's level coverage in America. Roman Catholic churches, PCUSA, United Methodist, Episcopalian, these mainline churches in their heyday and in their hegemony. Boy, this is bleeding into the other video. That's always what this happens, and I don't want. Well, I don't know what I'll do with these videos. Last week I played around with having a short version and the long version of the same video. Maybe I'll do that with this. I don't know. But in America, these things were sort of trapped in them. We are not, part of what the monarchical vision imagined we could do is sort of transcend up and be these actors who choose freely, when the truth is we human beings are grown and formed and shaped. And so Mark's a little, he doesn't want to be, he's trying to not be consumerist. And I respect that. And I take him at his word. And he's trying not to be Protestant in this choice, but it's just difficult. And then he's going to say something that, as he said later in the video, because he was there for a couple hours and Tayo came in and Risto came in, but he's processing this. And, well, why is he processing this out loud? Is this a show? No, it's not a show, because his channel isn't very big and not a lot of people watch it. But he's made friends, and the friends that he's made over the internet have a certain amount of reach and perspective and opportunity. There's a diversity in that is helpful to him and helpful to me. It's the same reason I do it. And that's why he's processing in this way. It just is.
No, well, that may be what it is. If that's what I'm doing, what I'm going to say is that's not what I'm doing. And I've not been clear enough. I thought I've said in the last video, I've said it several times, is I'm not church shopping. And I'm not evaluating Catholicism to see if it fits me. I've said that as well. I'm not even, evaluation assumes I am judging it. I'm basically taking the leap to study it so that I can so that I can keep following Jesus. The bottom line is where I'm at this point, as best as I can see, is if I do not see Jesus in Catholicism, I'm done with Christianity, period. How's that? Is that clear enough?
That's very clear. and a little bit later in the video, he'll make the comment about, it's clear for Mark that Jesus is his savior. But the question is, how can he be connected with his Savior? Boy, now I'm bleeding into the Redeemed Zoomer 10-minute Bible Man video. So I think I'm going to release a portion of this afternoon, and I'm going to release the full video tomorrow morning, because like with some of my videos, there's so much sort of connected stuff in there. Sometimes I want one thumbnail and title, and sometimes I want another. I really had that with the CRC video that I made, and I wound up having two thumbnails and two titles, and eventually just went with one, prioritizing the CRC, which is my church, my denomination, my people. But the other point that I made, I thought was also an important point, and because it doesn't get into the title and thumbnail, it doesn't go anywhere. And if you play around enough with YouTube, you realize titles and thumbnails are everything. They're everything in this attention economy. Now, what you do after the title, because of course you lose, if you're like me, Mr. Bean, Mr. Beast, you have all those triggers in there right away to make sure you don't lose anybody. And when Google finds a video that's like that, that's the videos that they push out, because Google doesn't want you clicking. Now, if you churn within YouTube, that's okay. But ideally, once they have you, they want to grab you and they want to keep you, and in the darkness bind you. That's what it wants to do. So, I look at Mark processing this, and now I want to get into Luke and Matt.
With me for not doing more text or for audios, or they're not, and that's my own insecure projecting bullshit. But
and we've played with Discord servers, and Discord servers are still going. And this is sort of like McLuhan's, he says, this displacement, these 4 rules of displacement. I'm riffing on it more than quoting it. But if you check AI or just Google for those 4 rules from McLuhan, basically about how one thing displaces another, we're at the point now where we're not just getting linear displacement, we also have churn. I just saw a video of this little MP3 player that people are now going to move against the distraction of their phone. And their, piracy is back on because of what's happening with algorithms and streaming services, both with music and with video. And so there's pushback. And boy, I really have enjoyed this conversation so far between these two. And the link is below.
But I was just telling you about PDK's last live stream and how great it is. But I don't know. There's a lot of ways we could go with that, because all the topics they're in, I've been leaving lots of comments. So if you care, go check them out. No homework. But it's really, really good towards the end, especially like Sartori. God, Sartori, I love you, because he's been talking to Daniel, OG Rose, reading books and different things. And he dropped this comment in there where I'm just like, dude, you have received the seeds that I've been sowing for years about Peter Rollins, because you just made a Peter Rollins comment, whether or not you acknowledge it. There it is. You got it, buddy. We have made it. Because he's fire in that comment, I think. And then Mark D. Parker comes in at the end and drops this John Henry Newman quote, which is absolute fire. It's good. And then Jason had this ending comment that I think he's a CRC pastor.
Jason isn't CRC. Jason was born and raised CRC, moved to Arizona, and he works in recovery. But he's not a CRC minister. He works in recovery.
Where he said, oh man, what was it? I gotta look it up because it was very good. He said, essentially, is AI the best community member because it pays attention to us selflessly? It does not have a self. And I'm like, that's a banger.
Yeah, when he said that too, it was like bang. It's like wow.
Of a comment or of a question, So there's a lot there. That's all basic. We don't have to interact with any of that. That's just basically a pitch for people to go actually watch that live stream that only has 700 views right now. I don't know what the hell's happening, but
Yeah.
that's weird for PVK. I mean, I know
We're going to get into what's happening with the algorithm because we've been, so this little signal group that had Luke and myself and Rod, we talked quite a bit about the algorithm because a few months ago, the algorithm changed pretty significantly, and YouTube has been tweaking engagement. And again, their goal for us is to bind us in the darkness, bind us in a dark room with a TV screen on, with a YouTube stream going, and just keep it feeding one video after another. Now, right away, I've been the beneficiary of that, because in the Jordan Peterson days, YouTube was feeding Jordan Peterson videos out, and then right after Jordan Peterson, my videos would be out, and then off it would go. And so, I didn't know anything about YouTube back in the day. I knew nothing, but that sort of started my channel and started all of this. But that's not going anymore. So what now? Is this still something that will work for me? I was just comparing notes with my sister, who has a smaller channel, a little bit smaller, but she does like a primitive American decor. That's what her channel is. It's very different from my channel. And I mean, her channel is really going quite well. She pivoted some things in her channel. She's like me in that we're both very creative, and we're both we want to explore this, we want to explore this and explore this. And she finally had to give up on all of the other things she wanted to do and just do her thing on her channel. But for her channel is a significant portion of her income. And so she does YouTube for a living. I've never done YouTube for a living. And so for me, I've been freer because of Living Stones. Now, of course, we're going to see what happens at Living Stones. There's another thing that's developing now that might change things again for me on the vocational side of things. But and so for me, the electricity going out, the algorithm saying, nah, we're not gonna send Vanderklay out there. We're not gonna, and for a lot of people, I mean, it was funny because I was talking about something and I realized, my mom doesn't even watch as many of my videos as she used to. She's my mother. Well, why? Because she's not interested in them, and that's fine. And we had our church visitors into our church. It was so interesting. A few weeks ago, and the church visitors were like, I don't know why this church isn't busting at the seams. I mean, this is an amazing little church. And just Sunday, if you listen carefully to the live stream during the prayers time, you had a couple people in the church saying how much they love this little church. They love this little church. And I know why. There's love here. There's learning here. There's all kinds of wonderful things in this tiny little church, but it's a little bit steep slope, and it's, a little bit acquired taste, but, and the TLC is like that. My TLC videos have always underperformed, and I can't even, I have to go. When I hear someone reference a really good moment that happened in another video, because of course I can't keep up with all the TLC videos either, I have to go and find these channels, and they're not easy to find sometimes, even on YouTube, where I know what I'm looking for. So
people don't, and this is also, listen, I'm just going to shame people. I don't give a shit. If you are not paying attention to where PVK has gone with his channel, which is leaning into more TLC stuff because you just want information and content, you're trying to live in a dead world. That's what I would say.
I mean, well, here's a way to make it a little crunchier. Speaking of a dead world, I think PVK's guests are they just happen to be a little older.
On that one?
And because of that, they are wrestling with things that I'm not wrestling with. So
that was a super helpful comment, because we all have our biases, and I have my biases. They're shaped by my generation. I was just commenting in these Signal chats that part of what's wild is that my mother is still alive and very clear and very active. And so I talk to my mother every week. And I know that world. I know her world very well. She was in her 20s when she had me. So she and I are not that far apart. I remember I remember all four of my grandparents. And I remember them well. And I knew their world and I knew their stories. Some of my grandparents were storytellers. So I was connected to those previous generations. And because I tend to be history minded, I tended to really be interested in that. And then, I was actually on the Signal chat with Sam, and Sam's like, "You're not a boomer." I said, "What do you mean I'm not a boomer?" He's like, "You like Kansas." I said, "Yeah, Kansas is a really boomer band." He's like, "No, they're not. Were they at Woodstock?" And it's like, they weren't. And he said, the boomers are really sort of 45 to 55. And then people born like between 1960 and 1965, we were raised in a very different era than those who were raised between 45 and 55. So we have these like 20-year generational demographics, but they don't tell the whole story. And so what Matt's about to say really, really kind of cracked me up.
Much. And people are our age. And so I tune in a little less because of that. Because what I hear is a little more horizontal space. Like they're worried about what they're seeing on TV. Is what I hear. That wasn't.
The old folks are watching TV. You just get home at night and kick up my legs and, honey, bring me the remote. I want to see what's on TV. Click, 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 click. And of course, you have TV with all different generations. I grew up with a little black and white signal outside of New York City. So we had like the best media market in America. We had channel 2, channel 4, channel 5, channel 7, channel 9, channel 11, channel 13. And then UHF came along and we had even more channels. And it was like, wow. And then cable TV we didn't have cable TV. I didn't have cable TV. Even when we were living in Sacramento. So then I went overseas. So that was different. And then I came back and I wasn't going to pay for cable when I could have rabbit ears, and how much TV do I need? And then by the time we actually did have cable, because I had a typical dad thing. I didn't want to pay for TV. So I had an antenna up in the attic and I had a wire running down out of the attic into the house because it's an old house. It doesn't have like the coaxial things. And my wife is like, when are we going to get rid of that wire? The wire works fine. The wire is free. So then we had to get cable. But then I also got TiVo. So because my wife and I didn't want our kids just watching TV. So then, we violated Jordan Peterson. We lied. Because the kids were like, we want to watch SpongeBob. All right, we don't get SpongeBob. We don't get Cartoon Network. We don't get Disney. We didn't get anything. I had a TiVo. I lied to my children. The only thing on TV was what I recorded for them on TiVo, and what I recorded for me. That was all the TV they had. And but of course the internet would come. So fair enough, Matt. Fair enough.
That was less the case with last Friday, though. But my instinct was we're going to talk about how one brother watches Fox News and one watches MSNBC.
Which, of course, he's talking about the identical twins. Now, I don't have any problem hosting that conversation on my channel. I welcome it. I love it. But Matt's got a point that this is an issue for like my mother's generation, for like my generation. And, I've got to get that Jean Twenge book or something. Somebody mentioned that book about how she writes about the fact that the demographic generations aren't even just sort of sitting in time. She also wrote this cell phone generation book or something. I'm not even doing my homework here, but see, bad YouTube. I should have a nicely edited cut video where I have all of my things in a row and it's easy to find. I'm a terrible YouTuber, always have been. But so it's so funny because when I look at some of these generational tags, and sometimes I look at people younger than myself, even my children's age, and I think, you're older than me. Because you're just locked into this urban monoculture. You're just, you know, whether it's the red drip or the blue drip, you're just taking the drip in, baby. You got blue church and red religion. You're just, and I see a lot of younger people just in there. And what's been so interesting at the corners, we got all these other strange randos with their other ideas.
That didn't happen. It has happened before.
Yeah.
So, and that's not a problem on there. That just means that they're navigating different stuff.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. So I mean, we can get into the stuff that we wanted to talk about, or we could just riff, but I have an interesting question for that. Because do you think somewhat, like even what you just said, and then also I've seen like last week on X, Elon Musk like made some comments about like, if you're planning for the future and your 401k and your retirement, he's like, all that's going to be irrelevant. It doesn't matter because AI, you know, is just going to take over everything. And that's very related to Grimm and Mathieu talking about God AI, like just paving with mind control, paving the way for God AI. So there's those kinds of comments, which I think hit Gen X, millennials, boomers for sure, some millennials. They hit much differently than people that have grown up in this cultural medium, maybe. And what do you think about that? Like, what is the disconnect? Does that mind control matter, or in your opinion, is it somewhat like it's irrelevant because all the people that are scared about it aren't going to be around that long?
That's really good.
The crazy thing about growing old, which nobody ever tells you, if you think about it, if you live a long life, you're older far longer than you're young. So you're like a toddler or a real little kid until you're only like 5. So that's like baby born to grade school in like 5 years. Whoosh, seems like forever. And then, you know, so my wife teaches at elementary school, and and for a while she's no longer in the classroom, but she was you know, she'd loop up with the kids, and I'd always go see her class. And so I'd watch these kids, and the older I get, the more it's like, wow, these kids grow fast. They change fast. But then by like 20, well, you're sort of a young adult. 25, brain plasticity done. There you're at 25 years, like 25 to 25. And you know, there's a lot of change between 5 and 25. There's even a lot of change between 18 and 25. And then everything starts to slow down. And especially if you're like me and you gray young or you lose your hair, you're old a long time. And you know, now far more than when, again, I remember my grandparents in their 60s. They were a lot older than I am in my 60s. Part of that has a lot to do with medical technology. It has to do with how they worked. I remember when I was in my 20s working in this lumber yard, and I'm in my early 20s, and so I'm just at peak physical fitness, and I'm doing all this physical labor. And I'd see these guys in their 50s who had been doing that for like 20 years. Yeah, their bodies are wearing out. And, you know, we have this idea that, well, if you just keep working, you'll stay fit. That's true. But your bodies do also wear out. Knees wear out, joints wear out. And so what we tend to imagine is that all through those middle years, you're going to do just enough exercise to keep your body at peak, but not the wrong kind of exercise where you're going to wear things out. And usually the kind of work things wear you out because a lot of it's repetitive motion. And so by the time people got into their 60s, they were wearing out, and a lot of people were dying in their 60s and their 70s. Of course, life expectancy had been going up. It's sort of plateaued now for a variety of reasons, but there's a lot in this. And so now, but we're also living in this environment where I loved what was in, gosh, where's this video going?
Oh, anyway, I think we feel like we're living in a simulation because we kind of are in many ways. We're on the internet, we're in games, we're on TV, we're watching TV, we're doing all these things that are simulations, and then we feel like we're in a fake world. But I mean, if you go outside and you build something, or you dig a ditch, or you chop some wood, or you go do something real in nature, do that for a week. Okay. And these ideas that you're in a simulation, they'll be gone. I can guarantee you. Like, they will be gone. You're not in a simulation. See, that's honestly my advice to people. You are in a simulation because you are in a simulation, but you don't have to be in a simulation. See, what I'm saying is the real world is not a simulation.
If you're seeing this, you might be in a simulation, but you don't have to be.
Exactly. You don't have to be in a simulation. It's not.
Well, the point that Matthew Peugeot is making is that it's the same point that's made sort of at the beginning of the Book of Pi, where, okay, you're living in a climate-controlled house. All of your food comes from machines. All of your daily interaction is mediated through machines. All of your life is surrounding the machines. You're living in a machine. You are living in a simulation. This is a simulated world. And the natural world offered a different posture towards life. And so he made that point, and I thought, yeah, he's dead on right there.
I've been trying to put my finger on it. It's funny. I really appreciate that our little group chat space has people from, I think the age gap between the oldest and youngest is close to 20 years.
Yeah, probably. Am I the oldest?
Yeah. And that's really helpful because people are letting their hair down and being themselves with people that are not in their same generation, like, at all.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And you get their even, like Seabax was talking about, here's a topic that happened. He was talking about the meme culture that he is exploring within his own family, with a group chat that he has with his daughter and wife.
I will do the work for you because I know where that conversation is. I mean, one of the things that I was talking to my wife about this, because she's like, yeah, but you remember stuff. And I do. I remember things that are said. I've always been an auditory learner. And I think that might be because I learned the violin with the Suzuki method. So, and it's also because a little dyslexic. And so, but I remember things. And so I know where that comment is. Part of the reason I try to be such a stickler with putting links to what I reference in the notes below is not just because undoubtedly there's a certain select number of you who are diggers. And it's like, I'd like to see the more context with that. And if I don't mention it, you don't get to dig. And I want you to dig into the other channels in the TLC. And for me, I remember, oh yeah, I talked about that in a video. Then I have to remember what video I talked about. But then I know I have it in the notes. So in many ways, not unlike back in the day, leadingchurch.com, that old blog that I was doing for a long time, not unlike that blog, this for me is an attempt to catalog and keep and curate my stuff so that I can use it the further we go. So this is Seabax.
With Daniel from OG Rose, runs a philosophy channel, OG Rose. And these two things kind of overlap. One is that we are developing a type of literacy that is electric or digital. And that's what the word electracy is not. It's not literacy, being literate of writing. It's being literate of this type of medium. And you can see this in things like kind of the popular Gen Z TikTok edits. And even as, and this is so strange, but as my daughter, who I recently, me and my wife, she's 16 and we allowed her to get an Instagram. And she starts sending us reels and we're having this kind of conversation. in our DMs with our daughter that is actually, and I haven't said this anywhere, but it's actually helping us know her better. Because her interests are,
they're knowing her in a different context. It's tied to prophilicity, but it's similar to what C.S. Lewis said about when his friend Charles Williams dies, that when Charles Williams dies, there's a piece of C.S. Lewis that goes away. Now, when their daughter gets on Instagram, there's a piece of their daughter that becomes, and they can now know it. There'll be more of their daughter that will be shielded from her. I remember back when my kids, Snapchat was the thing then. And so my wife is like, well, I guess we got to get on Snapchat. I guess we do. My wife got onto it more than I did, because with Snapchat, again, part of the thing with Snapchat was that things go away. And I've noticed that with Signal. I've got some real ideas about Signal and some of these other chat platforms. But, Signal, after 4 weeks, it goes away. And there's a value to that. And then for some other things, I don't let it go away because I want a record, because that way I can sort of go back and find it. But the crazy thing about us human beings are that we're enormously adaptable. It doesn't just mean that we colonize the Arctic and colonize the equator and colonize the middles and colonize every continent. And we figure out how to live and survive and thrive in different places. We're also doing this in the digital space. But it's uneven between the generations. Now, for someone my age, I'm pretty good with tech. I'm at least in conversation with a lot of younger people, but the cultural manifestation of this is combinatorially explosive, because Seabax's daughter doing this in Arkansas is going to be different but alike to a little girl doing it in California, different or like a little girl doing it in Massachusetts, in Toronto, in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, in Scotland, in England, in how many different places in Africa, in Asia. In other words, we are multiplying the cultures. And even within ourselves, we are multiplying how many little sub-us's they are in the community and congregation that is us.
Becoming more salient by the things that she's either kind of resharing or that she's saying, hey, or we're reconnecting on this. It's doing something interesting to our relationship. And it's through this electronic literacy of her just jumping into this pond and knowing how to share. And so, which is a new phenomenon, like that, the rite of passage to be able to like have a meme language with your parents.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty new. It's brand new for us. And of course, Jonathan Haidt would probably say she doesn't ever need to have a phone until she's 20, and Paul Kingston would say, get all your phones out of your house. But like, but we're walking through that. And, but that's like electricity. And then another interesting part.
And how they're learning something about themselves and about their own daughter that there's a dimensionality to her personality and her outlook and perspective that they don't get just driving her around in the car or something.
Yeah.
Learning how she does memes, which that's fascinating. So to tie it down a bit to what you just asked, although you can do anything you want with this, of course, because I know you've got meme culture in your family.
Yeah.
I think the younger generations are less worried about it because they've always known, because they developed a natural immunity to the internet called prophilicity. They have a buffered self, and I think older generations are really upset that the internet is lying to them, and they think it's the first time.
That's something that blows my mind.
Yeah, like, my whole profile is a lie.
Yeah.
The native space in which I navigate is a lie in order to tell the truth. So I'm not necessarily upset that half my feed is AI videos, because it was always AI in a way. It was always artificial. and you know, like there wasn't anything authentic happening anywhere in the silver screen. So, and I think the older people are still mad. And I'm saying this in a way maybe to be evocative, but I think they're still upset that it was always this way and now it's super obvious, and they're mad that it's so obvious now. When and they always kind of knew it was fake, but now I am actually kind of grateful that AI made it irreversibly,
undeniably fake.
Yeah, yeah. So, what do you think about
Which
that?
some people will pretend is real or something. It's that's actually really related to stuff I think Michael was saying in that PVK live stream, because it's and what I thought of as you were saying that is that's true. The way I will play with that is I watched the new what Running Man, like the new Running Man movie, which is I think conceptual.
Now Luke's going to go from Running Man to True Detective, and I'm not going to replay it. I'll put the link below so you can go to Luke's channel and play more of it. And then they brought in Interstellar because what they're getting at is the fact that, now this will get a little bit technical. I went to Voicers. I went to CRC Voices the other day, and I found I hadn't been participating a lot lately, and the clock speed of Voices had really gone down. And before I started talking about Voices on my channel, I thought the forum was dying, sort of like an old church. And then we had this fight in the CRC, and I started talking about it on the channel. And of course, people found my channel because I was talking about CRC stuff. CRC people started coming into Voices. That changed Voices because, and then there was just this huge fight about everything the Christian Reformed Church was fighting about. And now since then, as you know, that fight is sort of, people are being exiled, people are staying, the fight about the exile still remains. Going on in Voices a little bit, but people are sort of tired of the bickering. And then I sort of threw a bunch of things into Voices that sort of perked it up again. But one person said, well, theology is a science. And I thought, oh, you just said that, didn't you? Now we're really going to have to get into it because, of course, trigger the medieval conception of the queen of sciences being theology, how the definition of the word science changed, the grammatical historical concept of biblical interpretation, because that was sort of the only way in a materialistic frame where you could sort of, in a correspondence frame where you sort of wanted to nail down what the Bible was. Of course, postmodernity comes along. And basically what Matt, maybe I'll just jump ahead to what Matt has to say here.
No.
Yeah. There's you mentioned True Detective. I know the fellas are gonna be very interested in whatever thoughts you want to share with that. And you did share some. Skank in the group chat brought up this idea that just like,
okay, now this group chat they're mentioning, it's not a Discord server, it's a closed system. And this is, part of this provoked is like, this is like Jeffrey Epstein for everyone, but without the money and the pedophiles. And, it's all this. Glenn Lowry wrote a really excellent Substack about, it's all of this intermediarying. This is what's happening. And now partly because of AI and crawlers and privacies, these things have to go on behind closed doors, even though I have 100% confidence that there is nothing illicit or immoral going on in that signal group that I'm not a part of, but that these two are, and that they're referring to. Because this is what human beings do with respect to community. We have to talk, we have to process. And I suspect we're going to have more of a proliferation of this. I have on a different platform. I'm not going to mention the platform because I don't want people going to look for me on it. But I have a private, I have a multi-threaded ecosystem of chats that are all within my family. And there's all these different nests. There's like nests. There's like me and my wife. It's like me and kids that live in Sacramento. There's like all of anybody who wants in on a whole variety of topics. Then there's my extended family. Then there's other things in the extended family. I have a whole ecosystem behind, and a lot of these chat things are encrypted. I have a whole ecosystem there that, like Signal, that is just my family stuff. And you're not getting in because you're not family. And it drives my kids crazy sometimes because I have a rule, because I am the father and I thought this up and I started the whole thing, and I have a rule. Unless you are married, you are not in there. Boyfriends, girlfriends, I don't care what you think your situationship is, it ain't coming in. Why? I learned this long ago, because you tell me the level of romance you're in by the commitment you make to that other person. And when you do that publicly, I will recognize it. Until then, you might think what you want to about this person, but they are not family until I see a marriage. And, my kids sort of laugh at me, but I hold that line. And it's hard to hold sometimes because, some of these other people these other significant others are parts of our lives and we love them and et cetera, et cetera. But no, you tell me what that relationship should be. So it's interesting how, of course, Luke had Voxer and then Signal, and how these Signal chats are becoming more and more part of the ecosystem. And I think that's going to continue. And, we've been sort of operating in the open. And, like I did at the beginning, it's good that we're operating in the open here for what Mark is doing in the open and what I'm doing in the open. And one of the things I said to Mark in our Signal chat, I said, it's important, Mark, that you and I do this as old guys. Why? Because YouTube is a place for people with little to lose. And our careers are about done. We're probably not going to have other wives in our lives unless something terrible happens. Our kids are there. We're not going to have any more kids. I don't know if I'd want my kids out on YouTube just sharing their thoughts as transparently as I am. In fact, a number of years ago, one of my sons said something. I said, I don't think you should do what I do on YouTube. You have a lot more to lose than I have. Like Luke jokingly said, how long will PVK be alive? I don't know. My father died at 77. My grandfather died at 90. My great-great-grandfather died at 94. My great-grandfather died in his 50s. So I don't know how long I'm going to be alive. The channel could just stop, and at some point everybody wonders where I am, and then Rick has to inform the TLC that PVK dropped dead of a heart attack and the show's over. That could happen. Tomorrow is not promised to you, the old Christian evangelical line. But what's happening is that people are looking for space, and the key thing of this video, and I'm thinking this has gone on long enough, so this might be a separate video than the other video I want to make, but it'll be connected. All my videos are connected. Is the multi-generational stuff is absolutely fundamental now. If any generation is going to be sane, and the multi-generational church is going to be essential. Now, how exactly they work that? Because, a big part whenever I enter into this question of Christian unity, there's a kind of unity that evangelicals have that even Roman Catholics don't have, because Roman Catholics operate all their factions within. Evangelicals operate all their factions without. And so what is unity is actually a really hard thing to think about. Now, the Roman Catholics have impressive structural unity. The Orthodox don't really have that. So what kind of unity are the Orthodox? And what kind of unity are the evangelicals? And what kind of unity is there among non-denominationals? And that's going to get into this other video that I'm going to make. Not so much the unity part, but the tradition part, because I think at the end, Zoomer has some pretty good ideas about that, Redeemed Zoomer. But what I hear happening is we're wrestling with the fact that Seabax's daughter, there's a different version of Seabax's daughter that is like and different depending on the platform. And we've known that and for ourselves in many ways. Myself at church as a pastor, that's different from myself at home as a father. Now they're integrated, and there should be, integrity means that they're actually all connected in an integral way, but they're not identical. And the same with estuary, and the same with citizen Paul, and the same with all of these things. That's what human beings do, and nothing else we know does that like we do.
Just like Nolan's Interstellar, which was not critically reviewed very well when it first came out.
Wow.
And then over time, it actually kind of proved the thesis of the story, of the plot line a little bit, about how something's meaning can actually change over time because the perspective, it's like quantum theory, right? Like we're in a different space now where we can watch a movie about a dead world, and impossible choices that have to be made, and people lying to us to get us to do the right thing, noble lie kind of scenario stuff, that in 2014 or 13 in Obama world, end of history, like that just didn't compute. Like a story where Matthew McConaughey's like going to his daughter's high school and saying, no, we went to the moon. And they're saying, no, I'm sorry, we took that out of the textbooks. We lied. We never went to the moon. That felt like
I forgot
really
that
discordant, tone-deaf storytelling.
Yeah.
In 2026, that's very resonant. That's very resonant.
Yeah.
And the same thing, I think, goes for True Detective Season 1, which was kind of country folk, rural fear porn about Christians in the wilderness, that Hollywood likes to, especially back then, likes to generate money off of that fear. It felt a little, like The Hills Have Eyes. You remember, it's like that kind of thing. But in 2026, when you're telling me you've got like two actors everybody generally appreciates doing the best content of their lives about a conspiracy for child abduction and
it's Louisiana Epstein.
Louisiana Epstein. Like tell me that doesn't have resonance,
Yeah.
So and people liked it when it came out, and I think even now I think people like it on an even better level. I don't think I would have liked it in 2014. I don't think I would have been like, this is like easy punching down kind of stuff. Does not feel that way now. So
when did it?
And this gets into this question of authorial intent, because once you sort of tried to approach texts and stories in the way that they did in terms of biblical interpretation, authorial intent was pretty important. And authorial intent continues to be important. But one of the things that sort of scrambled that in the modern period, people would talk about authorial intent. I remember the wars over women in office in the 1970s to the 1990s. They talk about authorial intent. But then if you look at intertextuality, let's say between New Testament authors quoting Old Testament, there wasn't authorial intent. Suddenly we're at intent of the Holy Spirit in terms of inscripturation. And now, well, there's no escaping the woo. So, and what we see is that this is happening with stories now. The story isn't the same. What Christopher Nolan thought of Interstellar doesn't make that much of a difference. in terms of what's being appropriated. Now, again, a modernist will say, yeah, but we can't do that for, and yeah, they have a point. You don't want your dentist working that way. You don't want your chemist working that way, but you might need to work that way for figuring out your daughter. All right, I'm going to end this video now, and I'm going to make, and the other video is going to come out, and I don't know when I'm going to have it come out because I'm going to have a busy day tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. This morning's video about doctrine, law, and authority. I can't evaluate my own videos. You know, a couple of people said that they liked this video in the comments, so that was fair. And I listened to the comments, and you won't hurt my feelings if you say you didn't like a video. You know, in some ways videos are like my children, but in a lot of ways they're not, because I make so many freaking numbers of them. It's sort of like sermons, you know. A sermon, I know sermons that don't land. And sometimes a sermon doesn't land for me, but it landed for you. And. I mean, it's so, but I thought that was a pretty good video. Now I had to quickie do the thumbnail this morning because it was also in no wait, no ads. And so some of the people who are most interested in it, and again, YouTube is all about the thumbnails, but YouTube, why is YouTube going away? Well, YouTube's going away. Look, there's 3 videos. There's 3 long videos on top. What does that mean? That means out of all of the millions of videos out there, if you really want to get your video above the fold, you got to be here. And you know what? Nerd of the Rings, I've watched a few times. This channel, Forever Analog, never seen it before in my life. Weather, yeah, I'm getting old. You know what I care about? The weather. And how I often watch it? YouTube. And then look what we have here. I told Luke he'd better make some shorts from that. And so Luke made a short. Luke, you gotta up your shorts game here, Luke. And then look at this. 5 shorts. And if you go on your phone, it's even worse. And this is changing. Sometimes they'll go and there'll be more of the long form, but it's very clear that YouTube is prioritizing shorts. And that's a problem. Because, I mean, they're clearly competing with TikTok and Instagram Reels because you mouse over, there's a click right there. Just because I mouse over it. And that was on Sola. So Sola Media, they're promoting the Ben Sass video. This video, I have no idea. Of course, here's my friend Sam, my friend, the other Sam. And then I saw some interesting things about new home builders building these skinny homes, and I was interested in that. I watched that a few days ago. So, Grizz says I shouldn't show what, because this will tell you what I'm really looking at. I'm an old man, so I care about the weather. I like technology, so I'm interested in this kind of stuff. Oh yeah, I did watch something with him in it, and I like Lord of the Rings. There. Let's see but then all of these shorts. Now a few more. So here we have, and I watched a little bit of what's his head? Music. I listen to YouTube music. I'm an old man, so am I? Sam Tiedemann. I listen to Pat Benatar. Does that? I guess I'm not a boomer for Sam either, for Pat Benatar. And then I watch tech videos. And then more shorts. And then 3 more. And then 3 more. Now we're this will look like an interesting video. And of all of these videos, I watched Glenn Lowry. And now we're into the longer form stuff. But notice that shorts are prominent. Shorts are very prominent. So one more scroll down, and here's a playlist, a music playlist, and all these shorts. And these shorts can be just junk food. Some of these videos I consider junk food. When's the last time I watched Lex. But I also find that sometimes, you know, these video algo knows kind of what I want to watch. So yeah, the lights are going out. Maybe. I don't know. And what I mean by that is YouTube might not help us do what we want to do. So part of what I want from YouTube is videos about 1989 versus 2026. Part of what I want from YouTube is the weather. Part of what I want from YouTube is Lord of the Rings stuff. Love Lord of the Rings stuff. Sometimes I want to know what's going on, and I'll pick up a little something from the shorts, you know. I like playing around with technology, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, when Nate says YouTube is no longer telling him when Sam is, well, then there's this reality, which is, and I played with that a little bit when I started doing the 24/7 live stream from my channel, but that then confused the signal. So I was doing that on my Vanderclips channel a little bit because that channel is just sort of an auxiliary channel. Yeah, let me know what you think.